The New Mexico sun is a hammer, and the year is 1882. It pounds the dirt of this lonely canyon until it cracks, baking the life right out of the land. In the middle of it all, a woman. Her shadow is a long, trembling thing on the scorched earth. Her name is Leah. Her deer-hide dress is torn at the shoulder, clinging to her skin with a film of sweat and fear. She's tied to a post, not loosely. The ropes bite deep into her wrists, raw and bleeding. Her body is arched, a bow of pure defiance against the wood and the rope, and the whole damn world. The air is thick, heavy. You can almost taste the danger in it. Fresh hoof prints circle her in the dust. A wolf howls somewhere in the distance, a sound that slices right through the dying light of the day. And that's when he sees her. Up on the ridge above, a lone rider stops his mule. His name is Jacob Halt, just a man checking telegraph lines, or so it seems. His eyes drop down into the canyon and they lock onto her. He sees the torn dress, the raw wrists, the fierce set of her jaw. His throat goes dry. A feeling he buried a long time ago stirs in his chest. A forbidden heat. She's a stranger, an Apache woman left for dead. He knows what getting involved means. He's built a life out here on being left alone. A life of quiet grief and silent work. But her presence, it pulls at him. A wild, untamed thing that reminds him of a life he's forgotten. He grips the handle of his knife. The blade catches the last rays of the sun, a flicker of deadly light. He slides off his mule, his boots landing soft in the dust. Every step down into that canyon is an echo. Every footfall a choice. His heart hammers against his ribs. To cut her free is to invite chaos into his solitary world. The kind of chaos he came out here to escape. To leave her is to damn what's left of his soul. The canyon holds its breath. The wolf howls again, closer this time. He stands before her now, the knife heavy in his hand, and he sees the fight still burning in her dark eyes. What would you do? Sometimes the biggest choices of your life come down to a single, simple moment. If you're ready for this ride, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this canyon is full of secrets. Jacob's knife flashes, a silver arc in the twilight. The ropes fall away. Leah collapses, not into the dust, but into his arms. She's lighter than he expected, all sharp angles and hidden strength. He lifts her, her torn dress brushing against his rough spun shirt, her breath a warm, faint ghost against his neck. He carries her out of the canyon's heart and toward his small, lonely cabin, a box of wood and nails perched on the edge of nowhere. He lays her down on his cot, her body sinking into the single rough blanket. Her dark hair spills across the pillow like a splash of midnight ink. She's barely conscious, her eyes fluttering, her lips cracked and dry. He steps back, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He fights the urge to linger, to smooth the hair from her face. He's a man who has known loss like a constant companion, a wife and a daughter, taken by the fever back in Illinois. Their ghosts followed him all the way out here to this empty land. And this woman, this stranger with fire in her eyes, stirs something he thought was dead and buried right alongside them. He turns to the stove, stoking the embers. The fire crackles to life, casting dancing shadows across the cabin, across her skin. Leah stirs. Her fingers clutch the blanket, pulling it tight to her chin. Her eyes, black as a starless night, fix on him. They're not just wary, they're sharp, searching. Why? She rasps, her voice like dry leaves skittering across stone. Jacob doesn't answer, not with words. He kneels beside the cot, offering a tin cup of water. His fingers brush hers as she takes it. The touch is brief, but it sends a jolt through him, a current of life in this quiet house of ghosts. He pulls his hand back as if burned. "You're safe," he says, his voice low and rough from disuse. She drinks, each swallow a painful struggle. Her eyes never leave his face. She doesn't trust him. He can see it plain as day. And why should she? Trust is a luxury in a world this hard. As she finishes the water, her head lolls back onto the pillow. Her eyes close. But just before sleep takes her, her lips part. She whispers a single word, a name. Cain. The name hangs in the air between them, heavy and cold. It's not a word of thanks. It's a curse, a warning. Jacob stands there in the firelight, the empty cup in his hand, and a cold knot forms in his stomach. He didn't just cut a woman free, he just invited a ghost of a different kind into his home. And he has a terrible feeling this ghost carries a gun. The first few days are a quiet war. Laia moves like a shadow through his small cabin, her bare feet silent on the wooden planks. She never speaks. She just watches. Her eyes follow his every move, sharp and calculating. He works on the telegraph lines, hammering pins, stretching wire, the patient mule his only company. But now he feels her gaze on his back, even when he's miles away. He comes home one evening to find her stitching the tear in her dress with a needle and thread she must have found in his small supply box. She's using her own hair for thread. The sight stops him in the doorway. The setting sun frames her fingers moving with a deft, practiced grace. He catches himself watching the curve of her neck, the way her braid hangs heavy down her back. He turns away, his jaw tight. A familiar guilt gnaws at him. He's no savior. He's just a man running from his own memories. What right does he have to feel anything for her? That night he can't sleep. He sits at his small table, cleaning his rifle, the smell of oil and steel filling the cabin. Laia's on the cot, turned away from him, but he knows she isn't sleeping either. The silence is a living thing, full of unspoken questions. He finds it the next morning. He was mending her dress himself, a clumsy attempt with his thick fingers, while she was outside fetching water. The deer hide is old and worn thin in places. As he handles the fabric near the torn shoulder, his fingers brush against something underneath, a raised pattern on her skin. He gently pushes the fabric aside, and his blood runs cold. It's a tattoo, but not like any he's ever seen. It's a series of fine, intricate lines, swirling patterns, and sharp angles. It's not tribal art. It looks like a map. Part of it is obscured by her skin, almost invisible, but the section on her shoulder blade is clear. He sees what looks like the curve of a river, the jagged peaks of a mountain range, the very mountains that surround them. He quickly pulls the dress back into place, just as she walks back inside. She sees the look on his face. Her eyes narrow. She knows. She knows he saw it. She walks straight to the cot, picks up the dress, and holds it to her chest like a shield. "They said I brought death," she finally says, her voice steady, but the words are laced with old pain. She tells him the story. A child in her village drank from a poisoned stream. They needed someone to blame. A woman with no husband, no sons. She was the easy choice. An outcast. A curse. It's a good story. A believable story. But Jacob looks at the fierce pride in her eyes, the way she stands like a queen in rags, and he knows, with a certainty that settles deep in his bones, that it's a lie. A well-crafted lie to hide a secret she's willing to die for. The secret tattooed on her skin. "Who is Cain?" he asks, his voice quiet. Her body goes rigid. The name is a key, and it just unlocked her fear. Her eyes dart to the window, a flicker of panic. "He is the man who will kill us both," she whispers, "and he is coming." The desert air grows colder, the days shorter. A fragile truce settles over the cabin. Laia still doesn't talk about the map on her back, and Jacob doesn't ask. But they both know it's there, a silent passenger in their two-person world. It's the reason she flinches at every coyote howl, the reason her eyes are always scanning the horizon. Jacob sticks to his routine, checking the lines, fixing the brakes. It's honest work, simple work, but now it feels different. He's not just a linesman anymore. He's a guardian, and he doesn't even know what he's guarding. He finds himself taking different routes, checking his back trail, looking for any sign of riders. The instincts he learned in the war, the ones he tried so hard to bury, are coming back to the surface. One afternoon, he returns to the cabin earlier than usual. A wire was down just a mile away. As he rounds the bend in the canyon, he sees it. A horse tied to the scrub brush near his front door. Not his mule. A fine-looking black stallion with a silver inlaid saddle. The kind of horse that costs more than he makes in a year. His hand goes to the pistol on his hip. He moves silently, using the rocks for cover, his heart a slow, heavy drum in his chest. He creeps up to the window and peers inside. Laya is standing by the stove, her back to the door. Facing her is a man. He's tall and dressed in a fine black coat, his boots polished to a mirror shine despite the dust of the trail. He's holding his hat in his hands, speaking to her in a low, calm voice. But there's nothing calm about him. He radiates a kind of cold, patient menace that makes the hair on Jacob's arm stand on end. "I'm a reasonable man, Laya," the man says, his voice smooth as poison. "Silas Kane is a man of his word. He just wants what your father promised him. Give him the location and you can walk away. A free woman." Laya says nothing. Her silence is more powerful than any shout. "Or," the man continues, taking a step closer, "we can do this the hard way. Mr. Kane is not a patient man, and his methods for extracting information are very effective. He has men who enjoy their work." Jacob has heard enough. He kicks the door open, his pistol leveled at the center of the stranger's chest. The man doesn't flinch. He just slowly turns his head, a faint, mocking smile on his lips. His eyes are pale blue, the color of a winter sky, cold and empty. "Well, well," the stranger says, looking Jacob up and down. "The good Samaritan. I was wondering who dragged you out of the sun." "Get out," Jacob says, his voice a low growl. The man's smile widens. "My name is Marcus Thorne, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Silas Kane. You've involved yourself in business that doesn't concern you, linesman." He glances at Leia. "She's not worth dying for, trust me." "I said, get out." Thorne holds his hands up in a gesture of mock surrender. He slowly backs toward the door, his eyes never leaving Jacob's. "Have it your way," he says. "But know this, Mr. Kane gets what he wants. Always. He'll send more than just me next time." He steps out of the cabin, mounts his horse, and tips his hat. "Enjoy your last few days of peace." And with that, he's gone, his horse's hoofbeats fading into the vast silence of the canyon. Jacob stands there, his pistol still raised, his heart pounding. He turns to look at Leia. Her face is pale, but her eyes are blazing. "The story about the poisoned stream," Jacob says, lowering his gun. "It was a lie." She nods, her throat working. "The child who died. He was the shaman's son. He found me bathing in the creek. He saw the map on my skin when the water made it visible. I tried to silence him, but he ran. He told his father what he saw before the poison I gave him took hold." Jacob stares at her, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. She wasn't exiled. She was a murderer, a killer protecting a secret. "My father, the chief, made a deal with this Silas Kane," she continues, her voice a torrent now that the dam has broken. "He promised him a share of the silver in our mountains in exchange for guns to fight the Americans. But my father is a cunning man. He never intended to honor the deal. He had the map tattooed on my skin, a secret only he could read. He sent me away, telling Kane I had run off, hoping he would never find me." She finally looks at him, her eyes pleading. "I did what I had to do, to protect my people, my family." Jacob looks at this woman, this killer, this walking treasure map. Thorne's threat echoes in his ears. He came out here to escape the ghosts of his past, but he's just stumbled into a war over a mountain of silver, and he's standing right in the middle of the battlefield. The quiet life he built for himself is over. It was blown apart the moment he decided to cut that rope. The stranger's name was Marcus Thorne. The name meant nothing to Jacob. Just another hired gun for a rich man with a greedy streak. But the name Silas Kane, that name felt like a cold stone in his gut. He'd heard whispers of Kane on his trips into the dusty town of Coldbrush Junction. A land baron buying up ranches, water rights, entire mountainsides. A man who didn't take no for an answer. A man who left broken people in his wake. Now Jacob and Leia were in his way. The mood in the cabin shifts. The silence is no longer just tense. It's strategic. They are no longer a man and a woman. They are a garrison of two. "He said he'd send more men," Jacob says, checking the loads in his rifle. "He wasn't lying." "They will come at night," Leia says. She moves to the window, her body taut. "They will try to use the darkness as a cover." Jacob looks at her, a newfound respect dawning in his eyes. This is not a helpless victim. She understands tactics. She understands violence. He starts to see the chief's daughter in her, the woman raised in a world of harsh rules and harder consequences. He remembers his time as a Union scout, the long, terrifying nights spent in enemy territory, the skills he learned just to stay alive. The front door is a death trap, he says, thinking aloud. They'll expect us to defend it. We need to use the canyon. He grabs a shovel and a coil of rope. Help me. For hours they work. They don't speak. They just move. A silent, efficient team. Under the fading light, Jacob shows her how to rig a deadfall trap using a heavy log and a tripwire, placing it on the narrow path leading to the cabin. Laia, using her knowledge of the land, finds a loose rock formation above the canyon trail. They spend an hour loosening it further, creating a potential rock slide that could be triggered with a single, well-placed push. They board up the back window, leaving only small slits to shoot through. They move the table and cot against the walls, creating a barricade. The cabin is no longer a home, it's a fort. As darkness falls, a heavy, oppressive blanket over the canyon, they sit in the dim light of a single lamp, the rifle and his pistol on the table between them. The air is thick with anticipation. "Why did you stay?" Laia asks, her voice barely a whisper. "After I told you what I did." Jacob stares at the rifle, its wooden stock worn smooth by his hands. He thinks of his wife, Sarah, his daughter, Emma. He thinks of the helplessness he felt as the fever stole them away. He couldn't fight the sickness. He couldn't bargain with it. He could only watch. "I ran once," he says, his voice thick with a grief he never speaks of. "I ran from the ghosts of my family. I came out here thinking I could outrun them. I found out you can't. They're always with you." He finally looks at her, his eyes raw with old pain. "This time, I'm not running." A flicker of understanding passes between them. They are both haunted, both running from something. Maybe, just maybe, they could be each other's sanctuary. Her hand creeps across the table, her fingers gently touching his. The touch is warm, steady. It's not a touch of passion, but of solidarity, a silent promise. We face this together. A sound from outside shatters the moment, the sharp snap of a twig. They both freeze. Jacob grabs the rifle, his thumb finding the hammer. Laia picks up the large skinning knife she'd sharpened earlier. They move to their positions, their backs against the wall, their eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the windows. The silence stretches. Minutes feel like hours. Jacob's heart pounds a steady, heavy rhythm. Then another sound, a low whistle, like a signal, followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. They're here. The first shot explodes through the night, splintering the wood of the doorframe just inches from Jacob's head. He doesn't flinch. He brings the rifle to his shoulder, sights down the barrel, and waits. Another shot, this one shattering the small pane of glass in the front window. Laia is crouched by the side window, the knife clutched in her hand, her breathing slow and even. She's not afraid. She was born for this. A dark shape darts between the rocks outside. Jacob tracks it, his finger tightening on the trigger. He lets out a breath, squeezes. The rifle roars, the recoil kicking hard against his shoulder. A sharp cry pierces the night, followed by the heavy thud of a body hitting the ground. One down. A volley of gunfire erupts, bullets thudding into the cabin walls like angry fists. Splinters fly through the air. Jacob and Laia are pinned down, the noise deafening. "They're trying to draw our fire," Jacob yells over the din, "to see where we are." The shooting stops as suddenly as it began. The silence that follows is even more terrifying. They're planning something. A rush. Then they hear it. A scraping sound from the roof. They're trying to get in from above. The roof is the weak point, made of old sod and timber. Laia looks at Jacob, her eyes wide. They are trapped. He glances at the stove, then at the can of kerosene they use for the lamps. An idea, desperate and dangerous, sparks in his mind. He grabs the can. "Keep them busy," he shouts. He scrambles onto the barricaded table, his head nearly touching the ceiling. He can hear the men above him, their muffled voices, the sound of them trying to pry the timbers loose. He uncaps the kerosene and begins to splash it across the wooden ceiling beams. The pungent smell fills the cabin. Laya understands immediately. She moves to the front window slit and fires the pistol, the loud crack echoing through the canyon. It's a diversion. Jacob soaks the last of the ceiling, then grabs the oil lamp from the table. He looks at Laya, his face grim in the flickering light. This is it. There's no turning back. Get to the back wall, he orders. She scrambles away from the windows as he lights a rag from the lamp's flame. He tosses the burning cloth onto the kerosene-soaked ceiling. The world erupts in a whoosh of fire. The ceiling ignites instantly, flames roaring across the length of the cabin. Thick, black smoke pours down, choking them. Above, they hear screams of pain and surprise as the fire eats through the roof. The men on top are trapped in an inferno. But so are Jacob and Laya. The heat is unbearable. The smoke is so thick he can barely see his hand in front of his face. The door! He coughs, grabbing Laya's arm and pulling her low to the ground where the air is clearer. We have to make a run for it. They crawl towards the front door, the only exit not blocked by flames. The fire rages above them, the sound a terrible, hungry roar. The main ceiling beam groans, sagging under the heat. They don't have minutes. They have seconds. Jacob kicks at the bar holding the door shut. It's jammed. He throws his shoulder against it, once, twice. The wood splinters but holds. The heat is searing his back. He can feel his shirt starting to smolder. With a final desperate roar, he slams his entire body into the door. The bar cracks. The door flies open, and they spill out into the night air, gasping for breath, their lungs burning. They stumble away from the cabin, which is now a raging funeral pyre for the men who were on the roof. But they are not safe. Standing in the darkness, their faces illuminated by the fire, are the rest of Cain's men. At least half a dozen of them, and in the lead, his face a mask of cold fury, is Marcus Thorne. Clever, Thorne says, raising his pistol. Very clever. But it ends now. They are exposed, outgunned. Their fort is a bonfire. Their traps are behind the enemy. There is nowhere left to run. This is the end of the line. Jacob shoves Laya behind him, raising his empty rifle like a club. It's a futile gesture, and they both know it. Thorne's men raise their weapons, a semicircle of death closing in on them. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the night. Not a gunshot, a war cry, a high, piercing shriek that seems to come from the canyon walls themselves. Before Thorne or his men can react, dark shapes descend from the rocks above. They move with impossible speed and silence. Warriors, Apache warriors, their faces painted for battle, their knives and tomahawks glinting in the firelight. Thorne's men are caught completely by surprise. The disciplined line of gunmen dissolves into chaos. The battle is short, brutal, and one-sided. The warriors move like ghosts, their blades finding their marks with deadly precision. Thorne, seeing his advantage vanish, fires wildly into the darkness and then turns to run, disappearing into the night. The fighting stops as quickly as it began. The canyon is silent again, save for the crackling of the burning cabin. Jacob and Laya stand frozen, surrounded by the still bodies of Cain's men. The Apache warriors form a circle around them. They don't look at Jacob. Their eyes are all on Laya. One warrior steps forward. He is young, with a proud, stern face and eyes that mirror Laya's. He carries himself with an authority that sets him apart from the others. He looks at his sister, and there is no warmth in his gaze, only a cold, hard duty. Laya, he says, his voice flat, our father sent us. The secret of the silver has been compromised. You know the law. Jacob looks from the brother to Laya. He sees the despair in her eyes. This is not a rescue. He sent you to bring me home? She asks, though she already knows the answer. The warrior shakes his head. He raises a stone-bladed knife, its edge sharp and unforgiving. He sent us to return you to the earth, he says. The map dies with you. Her own people, her own brother, sent to execute her to protect a secret. She escaped Cain's killers, only to be cornered by her family's honor. Jacob stands between them, a lone man against a dozen warriors, and realizes the true nature of the trap he's in. There is no good side here. There is only death, coming from all directions. Jacob's mind races. Fighting is suicide. Running is impossible. There's only one path left. He has to talk his way out. But what can he say? He's an outsider, a white man. His words mean less than nothing to these warriors. He looks at Leia's brother. His name is Cale. She had mentioned it once in a rare moment of reflection. He sees the conflict in the young man's eyes, the war between his duty and his blood. That's the weak point. That's the seam he has to tear open. Your father is a fool, Jacob says, his voice ringing with authority he doesn't feel. The warriors tense. Kyle takes a threatening step forward. You will watch your tongue, white man. He sends his son to kill his daughter to protect dirt, Jacob continues, pointing at the mountains. He thinks his strength comes from the silver in those hills. He's wrong. The strength of a people is in its children, in its future. He is so afraid of losing his treasure that he is willing to destroy his own family. That is not strength. That is fear. He turns his gaze on the other warriors. Look at her. She fought beside me. She did not cower. She did not run. She has the heart of a warrior. Is this who you throw away for a rock in the ground? A murmur ripples through the warriors. They look at the burning cabin, at the bodies of Cain's men. They saw her fight. Jacob's words are finding their mark. Cale hesitates, his knife wavering. He is shaken, but his father's command is a powerful weight on his soul. It is the law, he says, his voice strained. The secret must be protected. Then protect it, Jacob says, stepping closer. The man who wants it, Silas Cain, is still out there. His man Thorn escaped. They know about the map. Killing her won't make them forget. It will only make them angrier. They will come for your people next. They will tear your lands apart looking for that silver, and you will have sacrificed your chief's daughter for nothing. He's improvising, weaving a new reality, a new path. There is another way, an alliance. Help us hunt down Thorn and Cain. Let us fight them together. Let Leia use her knowledge of this man to help you destroy him. Let her earn her life, not by dying for a secret, but by fighting for her people. It's a desperate gamble, a long shot. Kyle stares at Jacob, his dark eyes searching, weighing. He looks at his sister, who stands tall and proud, the firelight dancing on her resolute face. She does not beg. She does not plead. She meets her brother's gaze, warrior to warrior. The moment is broken by a shout from the darkness. Don't listen to him! Marcus Thorne steps back into the clearing, his pistol aimed not at Jacob, but at Cale. He's not alone. He has 3 men with him, the last survivors of his crew. They must have been holding back, a reserve force. He's just trying to save his squaw, Thorne sneers. Kill them all and be done with it. And as Thorne steps fully into the firelight, Jacob sees his face clearly for the first time. The scar that runs through his left eyebrow, the cruel twist of his lips. A memory, cold and black, rises from the deepest part of Jacob's mind. A memory of smoke and fire and a doctor's false sympathy. The war, a Confederate raiding party sweeping through Illinois. A farm burning in the night. His farm, and the face of the man leading them. The man who laughed as the flames consumed everything Jacob loved. It's him. It's Marcus Thorne. The world narrows to a single point. The foundation of Jacob's life, the grief that has defined him for a decade, cracks open. The fever, the doctor's sad eyes, the quiet funeral. It was all a lie. It wasn't a fever, Jacob says, his voice a dead, hollow thing. Thorne frowns, confused. What are you talking about, Halt? My wife, my daughter, Jacob says, the name a shard of glass in his throat. It was you. You burned my farm. A slow smile of recognition spreads across Thorne's face. He remembers. Well, I'll be, he says with a chuckle. Jacob Halt. I thought that name sounded familiar. You were that Union scout who caused us so much trouble. Yeah, I remember your farm. Your wife put up quite a fight. He lets the words hang in the air. A deliberate, cruel poison. The doctor in town was happy to take our gold to tell you a sad story about a fever. Made things so much cleaner. Everything inside Jacob goes cold and still. The grief he has carried for 10 years transforms. It sheds its skin of sadness and becomes something else entirely. Something sharp and hard and full of terrible purpose. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. He doesn't shout. He doesn't scream. He lets out a low animal sound from the bottom of his chest and charges. He moves with a speed and ferocity that shocks everyone. Thorn fires his pistol, but Jacob is no longer a simple linesman. He is a Union scout again, a man who lived and breathed violence. He dives, rolls, and comes up inside Thorn's guard, his hands finding the man's throat. The canyon erupts into a whirlwind of chaos. Kyle, seeing Thorn's treachery and the truth in Jacob's rage, lets out a war cry and leads his warriors not against Leia, but against Thorn's men. The Apache warriors, who moments ago were her executioners, are now her protectors. It's a brutal, desperate melee in the flickering light of the burning cabin. Tomahawks clash with pistols, knives flash in the dark. Leia fights with the skinning knife, moving with a deadly grace, her face a mask of cold fury. She is not fighting for a secret anymore. She is fighting for her life, for the man who is fighting for her. Jacob and Thorn are locked in a death struggle. They crash to the ground, rolling in the dirt and ash. Thorn is bigger, but Jacob is fueled by a decade of buried pain. He lands a punch that splits Thorn's lip, then another that cracks a rib. Thorn manages to kick him off, scrambling for his dropped pistol. He gets his hand on it, but before he can aim, Leia is there. She kicks the gun from his hand, her eyes blazing with a protective fire. Thorn snarls and backhands her across the face, sending her stumbling. Seeing her fall is what breaks the last dam of control in Jacob's mind. He lets out a roar of pure, undiluted fury and launches himself at Thorn. There is no skill left, no training, just rage. He hammers Thorn with blow after blow, the sound of his fists hitting flesh echoing in the canyon. He pins Thorn to the ground, his hands wrapped around his throat, squeezing the life from the man who took everything from him. Thorn's face turns purple, his eyes bulge. The man's sneer is gone, replaced by a look of pure animal terror. Jacob can feel the life fading from the man beneath him. Vengeance is here. It's in his hands. He just has to close his fists a little tighter. The ghosts of his wife and daughter are screaming in his head, demanding justice. "Jacob, stop!" Leia's voice cuts through the red haze of his rage. He looks up. The fighting is over. Kel and his warriors stand over the bodies of Thorn's men. Leia is kneeling beside him, her hand on his arm. There's a bruise forming on her cheek where Thorn hit her, but her eyes are clear and steady. "Don't," she says, her voice soft but firm. "He is not worth your soul. Let him live with what he's done. Let him live with the fear." He looks down at Thorn's terrified face. Then he looks at Leia, at her strength, at her courage. He sees his past in Thorn's eyes and his future in hers. The ghosts in his head fall silent. With a final, ragged breath, he releases his grip. He shoves Thorn away, who lies on the ground, gasping and choking. Jacob gets to his feet, his body trembling, the rage slowly ebbing away, leaving behind an ocean of exhausted grief. Cal walks over, his knife in his hand. He looks at the pathetic form of Thorn, then at Jacob. He gives a nod of profound respect. "The white man speaks the truth," he says to his warriors. "This one fights with the heart of an Apache." He grabs Thorn by the hair, hauling him to his feet. "We will take him back to our village," Cale says. "He will face our justice. It will be slow." He then turns to his sister. He reaches out and gently touches the beaded cord on her wrist, a cord she wove herself from the threads of her old dress. "Father was wrong," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "Our people are not in the ground. They are in us. Your life is your own. You are free." He looks at Jacob. "Both of you." Cale and his warriors drag the captive Thorn and disappear into the darkness, leaving Jacob and Leia standing alone amidst the ruin. The threat is gone. The past has been avenged, not with death, but with a choice. They are surrounded by silence and the smoking, black skeleton of the cabin that was, for a short time, their home. The night is over. A new, uncertain dawn is breaking over the canyon rim. The first rays of morning spill gold and rose across the canyon, painting the scene of devastation in a soft, forgiving light. The air smells of smoke, ash, and blood. The cabin is a blackened husk, a skeletal reminder of the battle that was fought and won. Jacob and Leia stand there, two solitary figures in a world washed clean by violence. He looks at the ruin of his home, the place he came to hide from the world, and he feels no loss. It was just a box of wood. His home is standing right beside him. He turns to her, his heart full of a feeling he can't quite name. It's more than gratitude, more than desire. It's a profound sense of recognition, as if he has spent his whole life walking towards a single, silent moment in a burned-out canyon. He reaches out and gently touches the bruise on her cheek. His fingers are clumsy, stained with dirt and blood, but his touch is reverent. She leans into his hand, her eyes closing for a moment. She has spent her life as a secret, a weapon, a sacrifice. And in one night, this quiet, broken man had fought for her against the world, against her own people, and against his own demons. No words are needed. He steps forward and she meets him halfway. His arms wrap around her waist, pulling her in. Their mouths meet, not with the fierce hunger of passion, but with a deep, soul-shaking tenderness. It's a kiss that speaks of survival, of promises kept, of a future snatched from the jaws of death. It's the first breath after drowning. They pull apart, their foreheads resting against each other, their breath mingling in the cool morning air. "We need to go," he says, his voice hoarse. "Cain will know what happened here soon enough. This place isn't safe anymore." She nods. "Where will we go?" He looks out at the vast, empty expanse of the West. For the first time since he lost his family, the emptiness doesn't look like a void. It looks like a promise. "I don't know," he says, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Somewhere they'll never find us." They salvage what they can. A few tools, a blackened pot, his rifle and his mule, who had wisely fled to the far side of the canyon during the fight. As Leah gathers their meager supplies, Jacob walks to a small, flat stone near the ruins. He takes out his knife, the same knife he used to cut her free, and begins to carve. He carves two names, Sarah and Emma. He stays there for a long time in silent communion with his ghosts, not to say goodbye, but to thank them, to let them go. When he's finished, he stands up, and the weight that has stooped his shoulders for 10 years is gone. He is a free man. They ride out of the canyon, not looking back. The mule plods steadily, carrying their few possessions. Leah sits behind Jacob, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, her head resting against his back. They ride west, towards the setting sun, with no destination in mind. They are no longer running from something. They are riding towards everything. Days later, they arrive at Cold Brush Junction. It's a dusty, tired-looking town, not much more than a single street with a general store, a saloon, and a blacksmith. As they ride down the main street, curtains twitch, doors close. The townspeople stare at the rough-looking man and the Apache woman on his mule. The stares are cold, suspicious, hostile. They stop in front of the general store. The owner, a big bearded man with a crooked leg, stands on the porch, his arms crossed, his face a thundercloud. "We don't serve her kind in here," he grumbles, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into the dust near Leah's feet. Jacob slowly dismounts. He doesn't reach for his gun. He doesn't raise his voice. He just stands there and looks the man in the eye. There's a new stillness about him, a quiet authority that is more intimidating than any threat. "This woman," Jacob says, his voice low and steady, "is my wife." The word hangs in the air. Leah's breath catches. It's the first time he has said it, the first time either of them has given a name to what they are. It's not just a claim, it's a declaration, a line drawn in the dust. The store owner hesitates. He sees something in Jacob's eyes that gives him pause, something hard and unyielding. A man who has seen the bottom and climbed back out. A man who has nothing left to lose and therefore cannot be threatened. A man in the corner of the store sneers, muttering the word, "savage." Leah slides off the mule. She walks past the owner and into the store, her back straight, her head held high. She stops in front of the man who insulted her. "I am Leah of the Jicarilla people," she says, her voice clear and strong. "I am no one's curse, and I am no one's savage." The room goes silent. The men in the store look from this fierce, proud woman to the quiet, dangerous man standing in the doorway. The tension holds for a long moment, thick as molasses. Then the store owner lets out a heavy sigh and limps back behind the counter. "What'll it be?" He grunts. They buy flour, beans, salt, and a new blanket. They don't buy much, just enough to get by. As the owner packs their supplies, he looks at Jacob. Heard there was trouble out at the old canyon station, he says, not looking up from his work. Heard a whole crew of Silas Kane's men went up there and never came back. Is that so? Jacob says, his face unreadable. The owner finishes packing and pushes the sack across the counter. He finally meets Jacob's eye. There's a flicker of something in his gaze. Not friendship, but a grudging respect. Kane's been a shadow over this valley for too long, he says quietly. Good riddance. Outside, the sun is low in the sky. Jacob loads their supplies onto the mule. Leah stands beside him, the new blanket folded in her arms. Your wife? She says, a small teasing smile playing on her lips. He turns to her, and his own lips curve into a smile. A real one that reaches his eyes. Sounds right to me, he says. He takes her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. Let's go find our home. They walk out of the town hand in hand, leading the mule. They don't know where they're going. They have no map, but for the first time in a very long time, neither of them is lost. They found their home in a high mountain valley, a place of tall pines and clear, cold streams. 100 miles and a world away from the ghosts of the canyon. They built a new cabin, this one with their own hands, solid and strong, with a wide porch that looked out over a meadow that was carpeted in wildflowers every spring. The first winter was hard, but they were harder. They learned the rhythms of the valley, the language of the seasons. Jacob taught Leah how to shoot the rifle, and she taught him the Apache words for the stars that blazed in the vast, silent sky above them. They were rarely lonely because they had each other. Their shared silences were as comfortable as their conversations. One evening in the early thaw, as they sat on the porch watching the last of the snow melt from the high peaks, Leah placed his hand on her belly. He felt a faint flutter, a tiny kick, the first stirrings of a new life. He looked at her, his eyes stinging, his chest tight with a joy so fierce it almost hurt. You're no curse, he whispered, his voice thick. You're my home. She leaned into him, her warmth a shield against the coming night. And you, she said, are my heart. Months later, as the valley was awash in the golds and reds of autumn, Leah gave birth to a daughter, a beautiful, healthy girl with Jacob's clear eyes and her mother's fierce spirit. They named her Emma, not to replace the child he had lost, but to honor her, to build a bridge of love from the past to the future. One afternoon, Jacob was chopping wood, the rhythmic thud of the axe the only sound in the quiet valley. Leah sat on the porch steps, rocking their daughter, singing a soft Apache lullaby. He paused, leaning on the axe handle, and just watched them, his wife, his child, his life rebuilt from ash and blood, and a single desperate choice in a sun-baked canyon. He thought of the silver, the treasure that had almost cost them everything, still sleeping in that distant mountain. He and Leah had talked about it once. They agreed it should stay there, a secret kept by the earth. Their treasure wasn't buried in a mountain. It was right here, on this porch, wrapped in a blanket and humming a soft, contented tune. The journey had been a trial by fire, a path through the darkest parts of the human heart. They had faced down greed, hatred, and the ghosts of their own past, and they had won. Not by killing all their enemies, but by choosing to build a new life, by choosing love over vengeance. Jacob chose justice over revenge when he spared Marcus Thorne. Could you have done the same? Let us know what you would have done in the comments below. This canyon's tale ends here, but its echoes carry on in every story of survival, every tale of love found in the most unlikely of places. If their fire warmed your soul, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you can ride with us again under the next desert sky.